Hello, hello, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. We're going to let folks come onto the call with us. So thank you. And hello, Jill. Nice to see
Hey,
you.
good to see you again.
And I know this is your second webinar back to back on this very same topic. And we've got lots of folks that have been interested in this today. So
Good. So I'm expecting a lot of questions from you guys because so
exactly.
much better than just sitting and listening to me drone on. So
Oh, heaven, please. Because if I have to ask all my questions, I've been told by my children I can get annoying. Mom,
sure.
you ask too many questions. So thank you everyone for joining us. We're going to get started. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I see lots of folks on the call already, so thank you. My name is Anissa Avon, and welcome to our Leading in a Crisis Virtual Summit Pandemics Box. Now that we're working remote, how do we bring them back? With Jill Silman Chapman, Senior Performance Consultant with Insperity. Very quickly, I want to acknowledge our sponsors. The Whitmarsh Consulting Group and David Whitmarsh are a team of super talented multi-channel marketing specialists. Do reach out if they may support you in your marketing efforts. I also want to say thank you to Insperity, of which Jill is representing. Insperity is HR that makes a difference. When I asked Insperity if they would sponsor the summit, they didn't hesitate. Absolutely. What do you need? How can we throw in? And then I went back and boldly said, well, how about giving something away for free? What can you do for our folks that is meaningful? And our business performance advisor over there, Josh, said, well, how about a free HR financial analysis report and debrief? And I'll be honest, I thought that it would be like some little, Excel spreadsheet that you fill out and they return it to you and woo, that was so exciting. But no, this is like an analysis, meaning you fill out some questionnaires. They spend anywhere, depending on the size of your organization, between 3 and 10 hours or, creating this report. And then they come back and they share with you best practices, help you gain insight into where you've been and where you want to go based on what other organizations are doing. And they knew that right now, 2020, if you had an HR budget, you don't now. Things have gone out the window. Things have got to change. So if that is supportive, don't hesitate to take advantage of that at https://turnkeycoachingsolutions.net HR report. Finally, I want to mention one of our COVID-19 sponsors that we've put together for, unfortunately, the very things we would prefer not to put together, but career transition services and employee outplacement services. If you or your organization are in that situation where you've had to furlough or disperse workers and you're looking at options to do that compassionately, we would love to be your partner in helping those displaced employees. So my name is Anissa Avon, and I am the founder and CEO of Turnkey Coaching and Development Solutions. We are a full-service, single point of contact enterprise learning and development solutions provider. We have master trainers and executive coaches and organizational development consultants all across the U.S. and in key hubs globally. And in March, when we realized that the pandemic was coming and there was nothing we could do to stop it, and our world, both from a health and personal perspective as well as a business perspective, was going to be upside down and inside out, I reached out to Jill and other experts and I said, what do you think about putting something together to support people in getting through this? And Jill didn't hesitate. In fact, she's done 3 webinars over the last month, and I feel a little jealous. I mean, guilty is the right word for taking so much of her time, but we are adding new speakers every single day. We've got 40 plus and counting. It's now every Wednesday and Thursday in April and May, on everything from managing a newly remote workforce to managing chaos and business continuity to today's topic. What do we do to get them back now that they're all free and fabulous and working from home, right? So let's get started. I want to introduce Jill. Jill has such a depth of knowledge when she is sharing with us in these webinars. She's a senior performance consultant with Insperity. She holds a bachelor's degree in journalism from UT at Austin. She holds a master's degree in HR management from Tarleton State University. A ton of certifications, including SBHR and SHRM-SCP. She also won't tell us how many years in HR and recruiting. I think she thinks we're going to try to guess her age.
The gray hair is natural. I can say that.
That's good. She is a business expert that is sought after for her quotes and her expertise. She's been mentioned in many media outlets such as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, also on CBS Market Watch, and has worked for such prestigious clients as Marriott, Fox Sports, Monster.com, and HR.com. So thank you, Jill.
Great, thank you.
What are we going to learn today?
So we're going to talk a little bit, we already spoke earlier this season, if you will, about, the managing the workers from home. And so I think we're going to start there and then move forward off of that to talk about, okay, this is where we are, this is the reality of today, but what's tomorrow hold for us? And while none of us have a crystal ball, I think we do have to step back and think about, okay, what are we doing right now? What's working, what's not working, and how can we leverage that for the future? And so just very, very quickly, we'll talk about our current state. And then I've chosen 6 topics that seem to be the most discussed out there about what, where we'll see the immediate changes post-COVID-19, if there really is even a post-COVID-19. I don't know. I think life may look very weird for a very long time, and our new normal may look more like something completely contrived than where we came from before. But we'll talk about some of these things that I keep hearing, and some of the changes that we can, bet on, if you will, that might be changing. But so let's just spend a second talking about where we are now. Most of us have sent our teams to work from home. The majority, or any of those who could, are working from home. And so there are some things that we've learned since we've sent our remote workforces out. There's been a light shined on our management styles, our employee workloads, and some things like that I think we still need to kind of get a handle on and fix in the moment. I think one of the things that I hear over and over again when I'm talking to clients and talking to employees across the country is this idea that the managers have been put into a spot where they didn't plan on being, they're not comfortable with, and they're still trying to wrap their arms around how do they manage this remote workforce. We found managers that are hypersensitive and hyper into everybody's business, kind of that micromanager, if you will. We've also found some that are missing in action, right? So I guess we haven't found them, right? They're out there, but they're not communicating with their staffs like they need to. So just a reminder that communication is at the heart of a success to managing any team, but particularly in a remote environment. And so check yourself, especially if you're leading teams, that are you communicating enough or too much? And how can you make sure that you're applying the right formulas and working with your team? This is important because as they've surveyed employees in work from home environments, one of the things that has come out is that the workers are feeling very connected to each other, to their coworkers. They feel very plugged in. They're doing those happy hours. They're doing all that sort of thing to stay connected. But where they're lacking is that connection back to, let's call it corporate, okay? The connection back to the office, to their leaders, particularly to the C-suite. And why this is important is if I feel voiceless, if I feel like I'm out of the line of vision, my opportunities, my interest in innovation is going to begin to wane. And times like this is when we need innovation, right? The spoils are going to go to those organizations that can innovate in this time. So staying communicative with your employees, keeping everybody together and on the same page is at the heart of successfully navigating today. And then because we were so quick to try to create this work from home situation, a lot of us kind of threw some structure out the window as well. And without structure, efficiency suffers. Also, interestingly enough, there was a survey done by the national, now I forgot who did it, except it was a group that does national surveys. But they came back with a look at the generations that are faring the best in work from home and those that are suffering. And the amazing thing is, guess which generation is having the most difficulty in this work from home environment? It happens to be Generation X, the youngest among us, those that grew up as digital natives, right? But this is also the generation that was just coming into the workforce. So they haven't had the luxury to build in or bake in some of their time management skills, some of their...
So you're saying Generation Z?
Yeah, what did I say? X?
You said X, which is mine. Really?
Yeah,
so, okay, now I got it.
Yeah. No, it's Generation Z, the youngest. And they haven't had that opportunity to spend much time in the workforce at all. So they haven't built in their habits, but with this work from home, they found a lot of distractions, right? They don't have that sense. And so building in the structure, particularly amongst your youngest cohorts, is going to be important for the efficiency of your organization and to actually be able to kick your can down the road. And again, just to speak to that idea of compassion, the ideas of how to motivate our folks in this very strange time. There are some that are treating this episode as no big deal. And we have others that are scared to leave their homes, and everything in between. And so being compassionate to understand how our folks are motivated, to know them well enough, to know how to work with them and to demonstrate your level of compassion, to understand that they're working with spouses and partners in their homes and kids underfoot and trying to be, a third grade math teacher and all those sorts of things all at the same time while still balancing their workload. It's just important that we stay cognitive of that as we move through today's chaotic situation and into whatever tomorrow is going to look like. So that's what we need to talk about, right? So let's talk about the future and some of these areas that I think are going to experience some fundamental changes and some of the things that we need to be thinking about when we are looking at moving forward. There's going to be a lot of regulations, there's going to be a lot of ideas bandied about, but some of these ideas are just germane to any of the conversations that we have. And, it goes without saying, we've sent some home. We might have sent them home after we had told them for 2 or 3 years that, no, your job can't be done remotely. No, we need you in the office. And then lo and behold, it can be done in a work from home environment. And so I do think that some of our organizations that were very adamant about everybody coming into work, starting their day in the office, ending their day in the office, are going to have to learn some flexibility. Will we go to a completely remote workforce all the time, 24/7, every day of the week, whatever? I don't think so. I think that there are a number of us that thrive in the work environment, being back in the office, to get our energy and our idea and build that synergy. I, for one, have been remote for way before the pandemic, but I still choose to go into the office. Not all the time, but I like to go into the office because I get a different kind of energy when I do that. My head's in a different space, and it kind of sets me up for a few more successful days of working from home. So I think that we have to look at our policies and our ideas around this remote workforce. I kind of teased it earlier, but I think we're finding too, as we're working from home, it's all about the deliverables, right? It's all about the results. It's not about how much time somebody's working. It's about what they're producing for us. So if they do it at 2 in the afternoon or they do it at 2 in the morning, does it really matter? And are we setting our employees up for success in this results-only workforce because of their workload, right? We need to take a look at workload balancing to make sure that we've got some that aren't underwater and others that find themselves with a little bit extra time on their hands, and where those distractions can set in. I think something else that we've noticed by sending our workforce home is that for some it's hard to turn off, right? It's just Let me do one more thing. Look up at 7:30. Look up again, it's 11:30 at night. Were they the types that maybe took their work home, carried the big briefcase and the laptop bag and all that sort of thing? Perhaps. But when your office is the same place where you watch TV at night and same place that you put your head down on the pillow when it's time to go to sleep, I think that there are issues in helping our employees to know what's expected. Is it, because your boss is maybe working at night and sends you an email at 11 o'clock, do you have to answer it at 11 o'clock? Do you have to log on? Or can we put some expectations around that for our employees? And understanding, again, to that whole idea of the flexible workforce or the results only, knowing that they may have to be working with their school-age kids at 10 o'clock in the morning, helping them to get through something. And so is that okay that we're doing that at 10, taking time away from work, but we're going to make it up at 8 o'clock after those kids go to bed, and I can get back into it? And does it really matter? FaceTime is an old construct. It really comes from my generation when we came into the workforce, who described working hard as working long hours. It wasn't the sweat of our brow. It was how long that we were visible working. We were the ones that, when people could stop working out of the office, we had a panic attack, because how do you know I'm busy? How do you know I'm really working? So I was the one sending the emails at 2:30 in the morning, and probably would note it in the email saying, yes, I know it's 2:30 in the morning, but I just can't go to sleep until I get this off my hands. But I wanted you to know that I was working as hard as I work in the office. So, just understanding that this is going to be a hurdle for people moving forward, and continuing to balance. Because even if we say in Georgia, hey, we're open on Monday, are the schools still open? No. Are the daycares open? No. So can we really bring our workforces back? What are they going to do? And so people are going to have to understand that this is going to persist, even though it looks on the surface like we're open for business again, right?
Well, I'd like to open that up. You folks are on the call. You're already, I'm sure, seeing some things that are going to continue afterwards, some decisions that were made as a result of, we need to adjust. And now perhaps you're seeing the benefits of keeping those long after. I can speak to a couple of clients that we have. One, for 30 some odd years, has had a huge travel budget, believing that their product required a face-to-face sales process. Required. So I just spoken with the CFO and the COO, and they're like, we just added 30% to our profit margin because we're not doing that ever anymore. There's still going to be some that are appropriate, but it's been this huge eye-opening event for them to realize we don't have to spend $3.5 million a year on travel.
Well, when these Zoom tools and all these tools for online meetings first came out, when we wanted to invest in them, what did we go to our C-suite with the business case of, it'll reduce travel, right? Because we can do this virtually. And it didn't really, because we still continued to do things the way that we did. Well, now we've been able to see maybe we can do it without moving around the country. Exactly. And so when I think about lasting changes, what a beautiful segue. And she didn't even know that was where we were going. But that travel expense is going to look different on the other side of this. Do we really have to have these in-person gatherings or face-to-face sales and some of those sorts of things? And it's not just the meeting face-to-face with our clients, but think about all the conventions that we went to, the conferences that we went to, those opportunities for just all hands meetings within our organizations. I think that those are going to be investigated as to whether we're getting the right ROI on some of those expenses as well. And a lot of our associations and organizations are figuring out how to do things differently, and they may want to keep up with some of those. It's expensive to throw a conference, to put a conference on. So they may be looking at their ways of doing business a little bit differently as well. But I certainly think that our travel expenditures within an organization are going to be subject to change after this. We may not be able to travel. We may not have the luxury of as many flights available or as many modes of transportation available to us, like we've had in the past. And I think we also have to speak a little bit about real estate. Already before the pandemic, I think commercial real estate was reevaluating itself and thinking about, are there other more clever ways to use some of the commercial square footage? And I think this is just pushing us further faster with some of those decisions. So if we are going to stay remote, is there as much of a need for the bricks and mortar? Is there as much of a need for the square footage that we've maintained up until now? Probably not. So are there clever and creative ways that we can repurpose that space? And just thinking about how we've been situating our organizations and creating our work environments, our bricks and mortar type work environments. There's been a movement for a long time to this idea of the open workspace, right? Like we just pick up our laptops and wander around and sit across the couch with somebody, or those little tables we have them at my office where you just kind of put your thing down and somebody's right across the way from you, and we just kind of plug in and do a little bit of work, and then we move on to the next station. Okay. Am I going to want to sit that close to somebody post COVID-19 and he coughs, and then what do? I go on full on panic. So some of this more open workspace, are we going to need to look at that a little bit more closely and reconfigure what we have? Are we going to need to create some more private spaces? I think that these are things that we have to begin to think about. Some of it will be regulated. They'll tell us you can't have people within this close to one another and some things like that. So how are we going to retrofit our offices to be able to abide by regulations, or just the feel of our employees, and to make life bearable for them when and if they do come back into the office? I'm an HR girl. Got to talk about HR practices, because I think that HR is about to change as well. We've already been dealing with stuff that maybe wasn't front burner. I talked about some of those management issues and trying to teach managers how to manage. Was maybe something that we just assumed that they knew how to do. And if the person was right down the hall and could pop in on them, maybe that was it never showed itself as an issue. But I also think that there's probably on a basic level going to be some things change because we're not all together anymore. So some of those employee relations issues, some of those things that required investigation and took time away from an already stretched HR staff, those may go away, right? And our HR folks could practice more strategic kind of ideas for our organization. Just before the pandemic became something that we knew was what it was, before it was a pandemic, I guess. They had the meetings in Davos, Switzerland, which they have annually. And the employers that were there, those major organizations that were there globally created what they called the Davos Manifesto. And basically what they said with their signatures on this manifesto was that their employees, their customers, their partners or vendors, whatever you want to call them, are every bit as important as the stockholders. So these organizations that signed off on this manifesto said everybody's as important as our investors, which is a little bit of a sea change for a lot of organizations, right? Well, enter COVID-19 and put your money where your mouth is, right? And so if your employees and your customers are every bit as important as your stockholders or your vendor partners, prove it. And so we've seen some really cool stuff. Forbes did an article not too long ago that highlighted a lot of the cool changes that companies have made in response to the pandemic to indicate their commitment to their employees, to indicate their commitment to their customers, to indicate their commitment to community. And I think those innovative, clever organizations that have embraced this and thought about how can we use this to better showcase who we are? How can we use this to really define who we are? Not what we do, but who are we? And I think that those examples are pushing these companies to be most successful as they come out on the other side of the pandemic. Whether it was an industry that said, hey, you adjacent industry people who have been riffed and furloughed, we need your same kind of skills in what we do over here. So come on board with us, come over here for a while. We'll help you out with that. Or maybe it was an organization that said, you know what, we can move our what we're producing and change a production line, and we're going to work on things that are going to benefit our community and our first responders and people like that. I think the way that we've treated our employees, and we talked with a transparent, very communicative approach to our employees about what's next and what we're enduring as organizations. Speak to the company culture, and again, present an opportunity for us to catapult these organizations to the front of the line post-pandemic. So I think some HR practices are going to change because of this. And there's some other things, there's some policies that are probably going to change because of CARES Act and some of these other things that we're going to have to relook at some of our PTO policies and things like that.
Exactly. I have a question for you that leads right into that. Leah asks, how do you navigate requiring employees to return to work with the understanding that people are still scared, and or are they covered by FFCRA?
Right. So
coronavirus response.
The family care, the CARES Act. So yes, and I think some of this is still being, bandied about. I was just on a webinar that was talking about PPP. So this is different, but stick with me for a little bit. But even though they've rolled out the first wave of that money, they're still they're still changing the regulations, and they're still making, explanations about things, even while people are in the midst of dealing with it. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that happen. As people relook at situations. So what might have been prescribed in March won't be the same thing that we hear about in June or July. So we're going to, that requires us to keep an ear to the ground, right? I have always preached to my HR cohorts, we have got to stay grounded in what's going on in DC, in our state capitals, and even with our local officials. We need to have an ear to the ground all the time to know what they're thinking about, what they're talking about, and how that's going to impact our organizations. So I think if you've not been plugged in to what's going on in the government side, this is the time to do it, right? And this is the time to be, subscribe to every kind of email update that you can get your hands on and that sort of thing to help you navigate through that. I think that how we respond to this, you must mandate, you must do this or you mustn't do that, is going to be very telling about how our brand as an employer. And so I think those organizations that are all or nothing are probably going to struggle in times like this to maintain their workforce and to keep the people as committed. You can just watch social media. Watch how people are talking about their employers and their jobs and whether they're considered essential or non-essential and what that means to their employer. Watch social media, and those companies that are super rigid are not faring as well as those that seem to take a more compassionate and almost an individual approach to the fears and the concerns and the safety of their employees, right? OSHA's going to weigh in on some of this stuff, I'm sure, at some point. So I know I didn't really answer your question, but I think the idea here is to know that this is a fluid environment. Rules are going to change on us, and we've got to be able to be resourceful in keeping abreast of what's going on and making sure that we're navigating within the confines of regulations and that sort of thing, but yet with a spirit of compassion for our employees as they go through things. And understanding not everybody's seeing this the same way, right? There's, like I said before, there's some that are pretty lax about it and some that are scared to death. Understanding where our employees fall in that spectrum.
Well, and I know you're about to get into this, but the employee expectations have already changed. This, we already knew even before this, that I think you may have been the one that shared the numbers with me, so help me not butcher this, but it was something like 30% of those surveyed said I would change positions and take a cut in pay if it meant I could have more flexible work hours and work from home. I would bet a lot of money that number is going to go up significantly after this. Those of us who've, I've worked from home for a very long time like you, but those who've just now had a taste for it will absolutely want a little more of it.
Yeah, in most cases, I think that they will. And so I think that that flexibility imperative for the organizations is going to be a hygiene factor moving forward and how people select where it is that they're going to work. That the flexibility, the work-life balance, whatever you want to call it. But I think that absolutely is going to be a decision, you know, they'll look at that first for making decisions about who to align themselves with. I think also how we treated our employees from the essential versus non-essential position is also going to affect how they evaluate future jobs, how we looked at things within our organizations as to the ability to work from home, if they felt like that was something that they wanted, or whether we made them come in, I think is going to be a decision maker or a decision factor moving forward. I also think the fact that we called some people essential and those had been amongst the ranks of our employees that were paid the least, yet we're demanding so much more of them than some of those that were not paid the least, and it appears that we're not demanding as much of them. I think that that's going to be something. I think people are going to say, you know, I want to be treated a little bit differently after this because you need to be appreciative of what I did, you know, in these crisis moments. I also think some of those that were furloughed or riffed because of their roles are going to say, I don't want to do that again because I don't want to be riffed in the next natural disaster or the next pandemic or the next whatever might happen. And so they're going to reevaluate their careers to look for things that have a little bit more stickiness as a job moving forward, that they can't be the first ones that get, you know, when somebody's talking about a down economy or something along those lines. I hail from Texas. And so clearly oil and gas and those conversations around the oil and gas industry are first and foremost in a lot of our minds. And I've fielded, I don't know how many calls in just the last, really it started before the pandemic, but oil and gas professionals saying, I have done this now 12 times in my career. I don't want to do it again. So help me to translate my oil and gas career into healthcare or something along those lines. And so I think people will be evaluating their industries and their jobs moving forward and deciding if that's really their long-term career path or they're going to make some changes. We need to be prepared for that. What if our pool for available people where we thought, oh, wow, look at the unemployment numbers. They're, you know, sky high right now. It should be easy to recruit. May not be so easy in your particular sector, you know, so you have to be aware of what's happening to your pool of available candidates moving forward, and you know, and building your value propositions post COVID-19 to appeal to the widest pool possible moving forward. And before we get off the topic, I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about sustainability. I mean, it's not a joke that when you go out for your afternoon walk, that the air that you're breathing is better, right? We've seen pollution numbers drop. We've seen, I'm on Maui right now. Schools of fishes are returning to Maui that hadn't been here for a long time. The reefs are coming back to life. You know, just because we don't have the slicks of like sunscreen and stuff like that out there. So things are happening to our environment that we've noticed in very quickly, right? I mean, like we haven't been that long on lockdown, but you know, the canals in Venice, we've all seen those pictures of those things, the water being so much more clearer than it was in the past. So I think another thing that we need to think about, and probably will be driven again by our HR groups, is thinking about sustainability and what that looks like, what our corporate social responsibilities look like post-COVID, and as we, you know, move people back into our offices and that sort of thing. Just think about it. If people spend an average of 30 minutes commuting every day to and from work, if that's their average, so it's going to be 4 or 5 hours that people are on the road. If we just take them off the road for 4 or 5 hours, think of the carbon footprint, the impact on their carbon footprint just for that. So I do think it's wise to think about, as we rearrange and reorganize ourselves, you know, with an eye to sustainability for our organizations and the impact that our organizations have on corporate social responsibility, if you will. So a couple of recommendations. I think some of us threw together some of our plans very, very quickly. So we might have engaged with certain collaboration tools. We might have invested in certain resources to get us over the hump. I think moving forward, we need to take a hard look at some of the systems and tools that we've implemented, what's working, what's not working. Do our systems align with one another? Do they talk to each other? Have we set ourselves up to be capable of managing our workforce, whether they come back in or they're working remote or a hybrid kind of role? Have we invested in the right tools? Do we need to make some changes there to our systems, our network capabilities, some of those hard costs moving forward to make sure that we're going to do it right for the long term? I think, again, too, with policies and procedures, we've let some things kind of go by the wayside and not be so important in the moment, just as a knee-jerk reaction. But I think we need to put some expectations around telecommuting, about remote access. You know, are we as secure as we once were just because we kind of flew into this remote working? You know, we've talked about it before, but sick leave is probably something that we need to take a look at, our PTO plans and that sort of thing, especially in the light of CARES. I think our business continuity plans, what worked, what didn't work, and, you know, and how do we reevaluate those? Succession planning. I think some organizations were caught unprepared. Yep. And so to be able to think about succession plan as we move forward, and to understand too, that perhaps the succession plan that we put into place during the chaos is not the one that's going to put us in good stead post-COVID. Yeah. You know, like those wartime leaders are maybe not the best leaders, you know, for the future, but they were great in the moment to handle things right now and to get everything under control, but they may not have the longevity of a great leader moving forward. So I think that those are things that we need to think about. And then again, our ROI calculators on travel, on real estate, on some of the things that we've invested heavily in the past. Are those investments going to be the same moving forward? So, boom, that's kind of my idea of
perfect timing. Folks, if you guys have questions, if you'll go back to that one, because you know I'm going to have questions. The one before.
Okay.
I do have a question for you about this. And if you're on the webinar with us and you have a question, please put it in your chat box or put it in the Q&A. We have a few minutes, and I'm going to bend Jill's expertise a little bit longer here. What I want to understand is, what is your recommendation for when a leader knows, okay, I got to rally my team and we need to come together and take an account of literally everything that you just shared. What are we doing that no longer works? What do we have to think differently? What's around the corner here that we haven't considered? What is business as usual that we really need to break down and reevaluate? How might, let's start with an HR leader. How might an HR leader who is super busy at this time, attending to the more urgent items, really also present the case for, it's time for us to spend some time now, not later, being strategic around this analysis? What would your recommendation be?
So if there hasn't been created a splinter group within the organization that are really dealing with the here and now, the COVID-19 responses today, here's what we're doing. You've got to peel off somebody who can not be so mired in the muck of right now, but really start to take that next view, right? To work in tandem with that task force, if you will, but also to be a little bit removed from that so that they can begin to plan, to see what's going on, to think about things, but to really dream that dream of, because we have almost like it's not a clean slate, but we have the ability right now to reimagine our futures, right? To orient ourselves 180 degrees to the left or to the right, because now is the time. Now is the time to innovate. Now is the time to right those things that were wrong pre-COVID and make sure that they don't pop up in the future. So if I was an HR leader, I would want to be, hey, this is cool that we're working with the everyday kind of stuff, and that's what this task force is for. But I need to take the more strategic and long view about, how are we going to come out of this, and kind of peel myself off to be a little bit more strategic and future focused.
And so making what you're saying too is making the business case for that.
Right, right.
Having your task force that is your response team, and building in time for strategy and strategic
Right,
analysis.
right.
Um,
And it's hard to
Bettina,
do, right? It's hard to do. You got, it's so much is going on, but
it's so
somebody's
much,
got to.
but it
Somebody,
has to.
yeah.
We were caught off guard, even though we knew for months this was going to come at us.
Mm-hmm,
We
mm-hmm.
knew for months. And most of us, 99.9, including myself, were caught off guard because I was too busy. I'm too busy dealing with this moment to think strategically about, the what ifs. And I think if there's one thing that we as a collective can learn, we really do need to spend a little more time in strategy if we want to be one of the ones that survives.
Mm-hmm.
Bettina says, did Jill complete the list from the previous slide? It had 2 bullets. And I think she's meaning you had 2 bullets of those 6. There were 6 items and you had 2 on each slide, right?
Right, right, right.
Go
So
back
employee
2
expectations
slides.
and sustainability. Okay,
Yep.
those are 2. Going back, travel and real estate 1, HR practices another. So now we're up to 4. Flexible future and work-life balance for 6.
Yeah.
Does that help?
It does. One thing I want to ask you, there's a lot of research, and we know if a leader or someone in HR is going to make the case for let's keep a certain percentage of our people remote. Let's save money on travel. Let's continue doing our sales via Zoom, whatever it is. There's some of them that are going to be easier cases, right, to make than others. You've been doing a lot of research and a lot of reading. What resources or research, or, I may be putting you on the spot,
Right.
but what would you recommend that someone, because they're going to need the data and the numbers
Right.
sometimes to make those cases.
And what I found is pretty hard to find some really strong numbers right now, because even our think tanks and our folks that we typically rely on for some of this, I was trying to find some numbers, and I went to the Federal Reserve and I went to state employment commissions and things like that, trying to find some current data, and it was still speaking as though we've never had COVID. They were talking about, like in January, the prices of oil may slip and slide, but we're still going to see growth in that area. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't work anymore. So it's difficult. But I think those, those typical go-tos, from a media perspective, the Wall Street Journal, the Forbes, some of those, I found a lot of good content and a lot of good good information there. I think I always rely heavily on those think tanks that are out there, the Deloittes and the PwCs, and I don't want to be, I won't pick one group over another, but the Kinseys and the,
Even the Gallup's research.
Yeah, these groups that have just ginormous research arms can move things pretty quickly and share some pretty good data pretty quickly. So, I would have my feelers out there with organizations like that spend their entire lives doing nothing but research, and they will probably get to us the quickest with hard numbers.
You're absolutely right. And I think you make a really good point. Even if the current numbers aren't about right now, we can make a case for what needs to happen based on all of the statistics about engagement, about why people are no longer staying with their company for 25, 30 years, but 2 or 3 years. Those are the cases that have been needing to be made all along right now. And now we have more evidence of it's time for us to respond to that statistic, as opposed to that doesn't impact us.
Right. And the other one that I think of is this war for talent. I know people are looking at unemployment going, this is going to be a piece of cake when I need somebody, this is going to be, I'm going to have to pick in the litter. I don't think so. We're already seeing that some industries are struggling to meet their numbers. Hiring is still going on right now, guys. Like, there are still people who are making some pretty significant hires. Just over the weekend, we hired 124 people, corporate and client facing. But in the midst of this COVID-19, so hiring is still happening. And if you think you're immune to the war for talent, I don't think so. I think very, very quickly, we're going to be right back in the same spot with more jobs and not the right people to do them.
And I think that's the key, and that's some of the research is pointing to, that it's, yeah, you can get a warm body if that's what you're looking for. But the challenge becomes skilled professionals,
Right.
folks that have the mindset and the work ethic and the other pieces that make up the quality high performer you're looking for. And some of the things you talked about earlier about the changes in the brand of the company, what you offer to your employees, and why someone would want to work for you, including the flexibility and the changes in your HR policies, are going to make a difference.
Yeah, yeah. And people are going to be their antennas are going to be up and super in tune with those. And even if somebody maybe takes a quick job just to get back into the workforce, for them to make a lasting commitment, they're going to be looking at all this. Yeah.
Agreed. Agree. Well, this has been fantastic. As always. So you guys, this is Jill's contact information, jill.chapman@insperity.com. There's her phone number. Why might someone reach out to you, Jill?
Well, if you want to continue this conversation, I can talk all day about some of these things. But if you have certain issues or just situations that you find yourself personally in, I'm happy to share whatever amount of expertise I might have. And definitely, if you are looking for some guidance from an HR perspective, Insperity is happy to help. So.
Perfect. So thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. If you found this helpful, do let us know. Come back and share it, the replay with your peers. Want to mention that one of the things we've talked about a lot today is about strategy. Turnkey reached out to some of our peers, and we've put together a strategic planning and alignment process for our clients, and wanted to make sure that you were aware of it. It is a pre and post crisis management strategic alignment process. It is data driven and science backed. And it is name your own price, meaning we're not looking to do what we typically do with this process. This process is anywhere between a $25,000 and a $30,000 process. We have put it on the opportunity for how can we help, how can we serve. So at some point when your leadership team is looking for what's next for us and how do we evaluate how we go from here, we would love the opportunity to support you in that way. We've also reached out to our master trainers and experts, and they have put together some buy one, get one crisis management, leading through a crisis, managing remote workforce, neuro leadership in Corona, you name it, virtual sessions to keep your employees in tip-top shape, even while we're in this craziness. If we may be of service to you, we hope that you'll reach out. It would be our pleasure. So as always, Jill, thank you so much. Uh-oh, did I lose you, Jill? I think I did. Thank you everyone for joining us. Stay safe and healthy. Oh, there she is. Thank you, Jill. Stay safe and healthy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mahalo. Aloha.
Mahalo.